Welcome to the NFL Week 4 Stack and the Win It. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Justin Elick, breaking down your favorite stacks of the week. Not an exciting week. I mean, there's not a ton of great matchups out there, but obviously we have the Patriots who are this is probably going to be a team where you just stack week in and week out.
Right. And I mean, a couple of the teams we might have been interested in, we've got, Thursday night, Green Bay and Chicago, some interesting plays there. We've got that London game, which who knows what the hell happens over there after last week, but you got Saints and Dolphins there. You probably weren't stacking the Dolphins, but I mean, that could be a sneaky source of something. But either way, if you're not playing the Thursday slate or that weird 9:30 slate, then none of those matter anyway. So, the Patriots, I mean, Tom Brady, of course, it seems like it's been, 10 straight years where he struggles in one game and everyone says he's done. And then he comes out and just murders everyone. Last week, 25 completions, 5 touchdown passes. Somehow this defense, I mean, the great thing about this stack is the defense has not been good at all this season. So they're actually having to throw the ball late. I mean, 5 touchdown passes against the Texans, last minute game winner. Brandon Cooks, it seems like he's finally got a nice rapport with him. So this seems like one of those games where they should be up big late and kind of pound the rock. Obviously, no LeGarrette Blount there anymore. But, Gillislee absolutely dominates the touches on the goal line and short yardage. So I guess it remains to be seen what kind of workload he'll see in a game where they're up huge late and see if he gets kind of the LeGarrette Blount type of workload. But when they get down close, he's going to get the carries there. So I think he's kind of the guy you throw into your stack. But, Gronk, highest percentage of tight ends targets. He's been incredible the last couple of weeks. Looks like he's back. And, I mean, really those 3 guys, and then you throw in Gillislee if you want to go full stack. But, I mean, I'm surprised this team total isn't even higher than it is.
Yeah, and you put in your article, I mean, Gillislee, 6 attempts inside the 5 this year, 4 of them into scores. And, obviously most of those came in week 1. But like you said, he just has that role that blunted last year. As far as the weapons, I mean, Gronkowski, I love that DK price tag. 66, like he should be much higher. I mean, 85 on FanDuel, Jesus, that's a ton. Yeah. But, I mean, Gronk's the guy who really, I mean, he was blocking a lot week 1, and then all of a sudden things have opened up. And, I mean, really, Hogan, Gronkowski, Cooks, all these guys. I mean, there's different variations of the stack that you can do.
Yeah. And I mean, it is, I guess, a fairly tough matchup for Gronkowski on paper, against this defense that looks like they're pretty good. And they've actually given up the lowest number of yards per game. But you look at the fact of who they've played the first couple weeks, and then you kind of just ignore that and you realize that this is still Tom Brady and it's still Rob Gronkowski. And like you said, that DK price tag, he should be just really, really high owned, especially after the cheap guys. Most of them kind of busted last week. Aside from Jared Cook, I think it was, did pretty well. But, he should be like, remember the days, 3 years ago when it was Jimmy Graham and Gronkowski, both a couple $1,000s more than everybody, and you had to take your pick. I just don't see how Gronk isn't priced like that. And maybe this is the last week that we get him at this price, or maybe DK is just baiting everybody. Again, they probably know something that we don't.
Well, I'm pretty sure they're partnered with Gronkowski, so they just keep his price. Like, they should just keep his price $6,900 every week.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it's too easy, and I think Gronk's a guy you should be playing in most of your cash games as well if you can.
Your next top stack here, we're looking at the Falcons home matchup against the Bills. This has been, we've seen them move the ball quite a bit. It's been a lot of Devontae Freeman in the red zone getting all those touchdowns. I think he's got 4 or 5 already on the year, where we were joking around with Julio Jones, and he's the guy who's going for 1,600 yards, but he's only scoring 4 touchdowns. Like, that's what his pace is right now. It's insane.
Right. And I mean, it's, that massive upside is there, and really they haven't needed him to have that huge game recently because, they've been doing perfectly well without those huge games. And they've got so many weapons that Ryan spreads it out, but when that huge game comes, I'm definitely going to have plenty of exposure to that. And you mentioned Freeman. I mean, he's got 9 carries inside the 20 so far this year, 5 inside the 5. 3 of them went for touchdowns. So, Freeman's still the workhorse there. People were speculating after week 1, of course, all the overreactions that it's kind of going to be a timeshare with him and Tevin Coleman. But we all kind of know that he's the more explosive guy. He's the goal line back. And, I mean, there's really no question there for me. So I think that this one's kind of an easy stack. I'm really not going to differentiate a whole lot off this. You could get your Taylor Gabriel. Obviously, Austin Hooper is not what people thought he was after that blown play in week 1. But, yeah, I mean, for me, it's these 3 guys if I'm doing Atlanta stack. And I just don't see a whole lot of upside for guys like Mohamed Sanu, even if he gets in the end zone. So for me, maybe Gabriel, but really I'm just going to keep with these three.
Yeah, I mean, if you're stacking, you're obviously looking for that upside. And, Sanu's been a terrific wide receiver 3 this year, like, double-digit DK points in all these games. But, yeah, I mean, he's not a guy who's going to crack 20 DK points like the rest of these. So I'm with you. A little bit more on the expensive side. I'm curious if people like come off of Jones just entirely in terms of ownership because of how this week shapes up. I mean, because of last week, he was shut down against Detroit for the most part. Against Green Bay, we didn't really have that huge upside game. I mean, he was involved a lot, but once again, didn't find the end zone. So I think people are kind of going to be done with him a little bit.
Yeah, and even after all this talk early in the season, before the season, bringing a new offensive coordinator, they're going to force the ball to their best player, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, they just have a lot of really above average players, like you said, guys like Sanu. So there's not a need like there was a couple of years ago to force the ball to Julio 15 plus times. So hopefully this is a situation where the game stays close and I need to throw, but I am a little bit worried about that. This game, stayed close late.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good for Freeman. I mean, hopefully those early touchdowns are to Jones, and then Freeman can kind of ice things late. But Buffalo's offense, they're not bad. I think in the spot they can keep it somewhat close.
Yeah, hopefully.
So your value stack, I'm not going to call you a homer on this one because this is actually a good value stack. So we'll talk Cincinnati. I mean, you got 4 guys listed here. I think these are actually going to be 4 core plays this week for me. So I'll let you kind of break into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the Browns. I know they've been competitive. This is a team they're still slowly getting better. Deshaun Kaiser's been finally. I mean, I'm just waiting for him to just all of a sudden, I don't know, tear his ACL. Something's going to happen because it's too good to be true for the Browns. I mean, that's just what happens. But either way, I mean, they're still a below average team. I mean, they're still a team that you can beat. And we saw what Antonio Brown did against them. They're still horrible against number 1 wide receivers. Bengals defense has actually played really well of late, last couple of weeks. So you imagine that they should be able to force Kaiser into some turnovers. I would imagine the Bengals will be the highest owned defense this week, and rightfully so. They have forced some mistakes. So even if Kaiser goes out, gets a couple scores, you imagine he's going to try to force some throws that aren't really there. And so you go ahead and lock in the Bengals defense, of course. Mixon finally emerging as the lead back. And I mean, he looked really good last week. I guess at least for the first 2.5 quarters. But I mean, they're getting him the ball in the passing game. He's dominating the touches, the snaps, everything. Only concern is that it seemed like Jeremy Hill, we assume is still the goal line back. The Bengals haven't really been at the goal line since, I don't know, 1997, it seems like. So I'm not sure that the goal line back really matters at this point. You're kind of hoping that he gets the 10-yard touchdown instead of somebody else. But, if Eifert doesn't play again, which it looks like he more than likely won't, then that's even more looks for guys like Green and Mixon. And there was some rumblings about Brandon LaFell last week, and maybe he ends up having a decent game, but he's just not an exciting player, not really a guy that I'm really looking forward to playing really ever. So for me, it's a pretty concentrated value here. Dalton's your cheap guy. Pair him with Green, pair him with Mixon. And I mean, imagine that Bengals defense. If you don't get some exposure and they have a big game, then you could be kind of a Rams situation week 1 against the Colts. That type of ownership, if they go off, you better hope your defense does too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Because, I mean, really, like you said, Bengals defense, really the only other one I think would probably be Jacksonville against the Jets. But outside of that, I think Bengals are going to be, like you said, the highest owned. And they're not badly priced. None of these guys, I mean, Green's your most expensive. And, he went up a couple $100 after last week. So, yeah, I like it here. I think the team total's a little bit lower. And it really shouldn't be. I think it should be bumped up probably towards the end of the week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 21, what is it, a little under 22 right now? It just seems really, really low.
Yeah. Your contrarian stack, and this was a stack that went off last week, but it's not going to be probably a stack that a lot of people go back to, is the Vikings taking on the Lions. And, I mean, really good options here for Minnesota this week.
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Diggs now leading the league in receiving touchdowns, leading the league in receiving yards. Even with that, subpar game week 2, which wasn't really his fault. That was just a poor team effort all around. Dalvin Cook, another guy, he's in the top 2 or 3 in rushing yards and yards from scrimmage. And I mean, obviously Kareem Hunt is about 1 million yards ahead of everyone right now, but Dalvin Cook quietly, a guy who no one's still playing, but he's getting a ton of touches, had like 30 touches, I think last week, getting looks out of the backfield. And, Case Keenum actually played pretty well. So I'm a little concerned here with Keenum because he is a guy that, throughout his career has been known to make plenty of mistakes. Lions have been taking advantage of mistakes. We saw last week, I think they picked off Ryan 2 times. So, yeah, I mean, you imagine they are going to try to force him into some mistakes, and they probably will, on all honesty. But, with 2 just elite playmakers here that still nobody's on, I think it's a pretty concentrated stack here. And I'm fine with both Cook and Diggs really in any format here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Do you like Adam Thielen at all this week? I kind of like him too, especially on DK.
I love Adam Thielen. He's a guy that I've got every season-long team because I'm still one of those people that plays that. But, I mean, he's just good. He's like the prime. Like, he reminds me of just Wes Welker in his prime, the guy who's going to go and get you, upwards of 10, 12 catches in the game. He doesn't really have a whole lot of touchdown upside, but PPR in particular, on DK especially, I think he's got a really nice floor. And you imagine that this game, I think, is kind of a sneaky shootout potential here for both these teams, because I know the Vikings defense has improved, but definitely potential for 50-plus points in this game.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, when you look at things, I love that this game's in Minnesota too, because I do think that's going to be a big, especially for a guy like Keenum. Like those guys on the road against Pittsburgh, it was just kind of a bad spot. But when they got back home, I mean, I kind of liked them a little bit more. I took them more into consideration. And I still don't think, I mean, Diggs might get some recency bias ownership. I don't think Cook's going to be tremendously high owned because there's guys like Joe Mixon and Devontae Freeman and Ezekiel Elliott who are like, his price is up now. Cook's $7,500 on FanDuel, $65 on DK. He was $1,000 cheaper last week.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, especially when there's decent value options, people hesitate to pay up for these guys. But I still don't think either of these guys are priced accordingly to what they've actually been doing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Anyone just missed the cut for week 4?
I mean, I guess one team I liked was the Packers, but obviously they're in the Thursday night slate, so not one that I love. I mean, I just don't really love this slate a whole lot. So, I mean, looking at this week, these guys kind of made the cut there, and I don't know. I think that I want to say Carolina because that's a game where they're going to be down. They're going to have to be trying to score, but I mean, it's just they've been so horrible offensively.
They're dead to me.
They're so bad.
They were dead to me from the start of this year. Cam Newton, something's up with him.
I mean, yeah, he is definitely being exposed. So I just think that's not really a spot that I mean, Detroit, like I said, I think that's got shootout potential. So I could see Detroit as a team. Normally you'd like Pittsburgh, but I don't like that spot against the Ravens after they just got murdered by a bad offense. So really outside of that, I'm not in love with anybody out here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think Seattle on FanDuel is interesting because they still have this Sunday night game. But outside of that, there's, like I said at the beginning, there's just not a lot of good matchups this week.
No, I think it's going to be a one-off type of week.
Yeah, I'm with you. So let's go wrap things up here. You can head on over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. You can check out Justin's article up on the site now. And good luck in week 4.